In this first chapter of Word, they teach you how to tighten up your line spacing for certain types of formatting. So when you're typing an address, you kind of want it single spaced. This isn't exactly single spaced, but you kind of want it single spaced. You don't want big spaces in between your paragraph. Down here on your salutation, again, you want this to look more single spaced without this paragraph spacing that we see here in between. So by default, and I'm just going to click on in this area over here and launch the paragraph group. By default, when you open up Word, it's always going to add 8 points of spacing in between paragraphs. So that means every time you hit enter, it's always going to add a little bit more space. And the default line spacing is set at 1.08. So not quite single spaced, but a little bit more. So when you're just typing a paragraph and you're using word wrap, choose cancel here, like this will show 1.08 space in between your sentences here, and as soon as you hit enter, it's going to leave that extra 8 points of space. So again, if we don't want it to do that, we're typing addresses here, and we kind of want to keep this a little bit tighter. I know this looks big because I increased the font size, but for this one I used the Shift Enter keystroke to tighten it up so that there's not that big paragraph space in between. And this might be the easiest way. You don't have to make any changes. You just hold your shift key down and hit enter, and it will only tighten up the lines that you do that for. And of course, then when you're done with the address, you can just hit a regular enter. But there's another way to do it. If you wanted to change your settings, you could select the information that you wanted to change, and we can launch the paragraph group here. And one way is to change the 8 points to 0 points. So this used to say 8 points of space here, and I changed it to 0 points. And when I did that, it tightened it up. It would be the same thing as doing a shift enter over here. If I add the 8 points of back, say OK, you can see now that every time it hit enter, it left that big paragraph spacing. So launch the paragraph group and just update this to 0. And actually another way to do this would be to go to the layout ribbon, and right here in this paragraph group, you have a couple of these tools that you can use, and you can change your number here also if you wanted to. A third way to tighten up your spacing by changing your settings, again, would be to launch your paragraph group. And this time you're going to put a check mark where it says don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. So I'm going to take the check mark out of here and click OK. And again, you can see how it opened it up and it made the extra 8 points of space. I'll select it again, launch the paragraph group, add the check mark back and say OK, and it tightened it up. So 3 ways to adjust your line spacing when you want to do it tightened up. You can do a shift enter, you can delete the after paragraph, or you can put a check mark and don't add space between your paragraphs. They all do the same thing, whichever one you remember, whichever one's easiest, whichever one fits the information that you have.